right, welcome in STEM for Girls members. I am here today with a few guests who we'll introduce shortly. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm just going to go through a quick presentation on WRDC and an overview of who we are and what we do here at STEM for Girls. Before we do anything, if it's virtual or in person, we usually start with a land acknowledgement. So we respectfully acknowledge the territory in which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk and the island of Newfoundland as the ancestral homelands of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. We'd also like to recognize the Inuit of Nunatsiavut and Nunavut and the Innu of Nitassinan and their ancestors as the original people of Labrador. We strive for respectful relationships with all the peoples of this province as we search for collective healing and true reconciliation and honor this beautiful land together. So of course, I'm coming from Newfoundland. If you're visiting or if you're watching from anywhere else across the country or anywhere around the world, feel free to take a moment to do the same with wherever you're coming from. So about us, our parent organization, WRDC, or Women in Resource Development Corporation, we actually celebrated our 25th anniversary a couple years ago, and we're a provincial nonprofit committed to increasing women's participation in technology and skill trades. So this is a photo of one of our former runnings at the College of the North Atlantic here in St. John's. Some of our programs and services we offer at WRDC. So we do career exploration programs and education and outreach. So those are the three big parts of STEM for Girls. So if you check out our website, if you tune into our clubhouse, those are kind of the three core principles of what we do. The career development and employment assistance services. So this is for any woman or gender diverse individual across Newfoundland and Labrador who are wondering, where they can go next, if they're finishing college or university, or if they're wanting to change their career path or direction. We also offer DEI services, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these are often consultation services and training for employers. And of course, we do a lot of research and collaboration and partnerships. So this is with stakeholders and people, in other nonprofits and people in organizations that impact women in trades and technology. We get this question a lot. So when we talk about girls, obviously STEM for Girls, we have an inclusive definition of girls. So women and or girls refers to anyone who identifies as a woman and or girl and explicitly includes cisgender, transgender, non-binary, non-conforming, and or gender fluid individuals. So this means anyone, irrespective of their assigned gender at birth. And this can mean gender identity, gender expression, anyone who's experienced or continues to be subject to experiencing discrimination based on identifying as and or being identified by others as a woman or a girl. This is a photo of one of our events, actually, when we went to Marine Institute. And when it comes to our virtual classroom, so we have lots of exciting things coming up. In our 2023 virtual classroom, which you can check out on our website, we had 203 girls and gender diverse youth engaged. We had a total of 86 role models profiled, 75 videos that you can check out at any time that are all recorded and uploaded to the website, and 751 STEM kits that were distributed. So these are some of the activities that we have done that we've done via mail out. Some of the members tuning in may have actually done these or maybe pictured here in these photos. These are some of our visits that we've done over the summer with our community centers here in St. John's. And the plan moving forward. So right now we have 200 members. That's always growing. We have 27 who are identified as marginalized by more than just gender, 52 who have rural postal codes, and 78 who live outside of the greater St. John's area. So a big part of this is helping us grow. If you're tuning in and you're already part of STEM for Girls, we also have school chapters. This is a big thing we're working toward improving upon and building upon, and helping reach more schools and teachers across the province. We have summer camp programs where we connect with youth and community centers across Newfoundland, junior leadership programs and scholarships, and also activity kit mailouts and special events. All right, so now that I've done the whole STEM for Girls rant, anyone who's tuning in, like I said, you can check out the website, you can check out our social media to learn more, or you can always email us. I wanted to take time before we dive into a lot of the questions that people have sent in. They're always very curious about. to actually let our guests introduce themselves. So Tim, you can actually go ahead first.
Hi there, my name is Tim King. I was a teacher for a really long time at Centre Wellington District High School, and Razz and Louise were two of my students. So what we started there was in 2018, we started Cyber Titan, a team the first year it happened. So I'd been using ICTC for statistics, for trying to convince kids to go into ICT careers. And so we got involved in cybersecurity. I'd never done any of that before. I worked in IT before I was a teacher. So I know how to build a network, but I hadn't been doing any modern cybersecurity. So I had to learn from scratch. Having an IT background helped. But, 2018, we're at the national finals, and I happened to be standing next to Sandra Sarek, who was the vice president who had put on Cyber Titan. And they were taking a picture of the teams, and out of 80 students there were 3 girls. And Sandra, under her breath, said, "Where are all the girls?" And I just happened to be standing there, and I kind of went back to our little town on a mission. So one of the problems we have in my school is whether by guidance or other means, girls get selected out of tech courses fairly aggressively throughout high school. I was lucky to ever have any girl in any of my senior engineering classes. 2019, I convinced Louise and Razz and a few other intrepid souls to create an all-girls team. Best team name ever, but I'll leave it to them to explain that. And then I had to fight with my school board for many years to keep it, but totally worth it. And we ended up at the national finals in 2019 as the first ever all-female team at the national finals. So you've got two pioneers in cybersecurity here in Canadian education. So what happened to me was last year, ICTC said, "Would you be interested in being seconded and supporting Cyber Titan?" I'm a huge fan of the competition. I've seen it open up pathways for rural kids who would otherwise be stuck at a Walmart in our little town, and they're not. We've got one student who's now with the Canadian Navy. They told him it would be a 4-year wait to get in, and then he said he's done Cyber Titan, and he was in the next week. We've got students who have gone to Waterloo and are completing their degrees there from our first team. And of course, we've got all these rock stars from the Teraviches as well. So I've seen this open up pathways. When ICTC said, "Do you want to do it as a secondment?" I was like, yeah. So ICTC is the Information and Communication Technology Council. It's a real mouthful, but it's the IT Council of Canada. So our job is to try and prepare Canadians for the digital future. Schools sometimes struggle with this stuff, so we provide federal resources, and one of those things is Cyber Titan. So that's why I'm here, and I'm really thrilled to see two of my favorite students again.
So Tim, you're located in Ontario. And just, I guess, to give any students or staff that are watching this kind of an explanation, ICTC is national. So like any resources that, for example, Louise and Razz took advantage of through ICTC would be available to any students here in Newfoundland and Labrador as well.
Coast to coast to coast. Last year, we actually had a team based in St. John's through Tech NL, and
Okay.
it was a virtual team. So they did everything through Discord and worked together, but they were from all 4 points of the island. So
Amazing.
yeah, you had students from all over Newfoundland last year. First time ever we had a team. I'm really hoping we can drum up some for this year. If you need anything at all, including me coming out there and helping, I will do that. Whatever you need. We're here to help, and we are national.
Amazing. Okay. Louise, I'll hand it over to you for an intro.
Yeah, so my name is Louise Turner. I go to Queen's University in Kingston. I'm a third year computer science student who's specializing in cybersecurity. And one of the big main reasons why I'm at this point that I'm at today is because of getting into STEM and getting into Cyber Titan during high school. I kind of had no idea what I was going to do with my life and with my future, and I probably would have ended up someplace completely different if I didn't choose to just kind of try it out, then realize I was pretty good at it and I really enjoyed it. And then that just led me to where I am today at Queen's, and I just love being here, love this school, love this program, and I really encourage other girls to do the same.
Love it. Thank you. And Raz.
Yeah, and so I'm Razz. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe in Ottawa, and I'm a student at Carleton University. I'm in my fourth-ish year, and I actually didn't end up sticking in computer science, but I am still in a science program. So I'm in geomatics, which is sort of a combination of like environmental science and environmental studies with that computer science skill. But I did start out in computer science at the beginning of my undergrad, and just my interest sort of changed, and I ended up in geomatics. But the kind of foundational technology skills and stuff that I was able to get from Cyber Titan were like super useful to uh, getting established and like being yeah, like there's still tons of coding and like cybersecurity related and IT networking related things involved in like geomatics. And so that was really helpful in sort of establishing that.
Amazing, thanks. So I'll dive into the questions because I know oftentimes when we meet with role models in different STEM careers or different STEM fields, we don't often get a chance to meet with a lot of people who are currently like doing their studies, if it's their first year, their fourth year, what have you. And I guess I'll go through some basic questions first, and then if you want to branch off into something else, like feel free. My first question, and I know this is really popular, especially for students when they get into high school, would be, and I guess I can start with Louise, would be, how did you decide what university to go to? Like, I know obviously in Newfoundland, we have one university right now, that, you know, we don't have a whole lot of options. And I think a lot of students in Newfoundland feel like, you know, I've got to go here, I've got to stay here. But for students who are thinking about leaving Newfoundland to go to New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, Ontario, Quebec, how did you pick a university?
Yeah, so picking a university for me was definitely quite tricky. Because I'm not an insanely academic person. Like I'm pretty good at academics, but I'm not like hardcore. I need academics in my life. So I didn't apply to places like Waterloo and stuff because I didn't feel like I would really fit in there. Because everyone there is like super hardcore, but I also wanted a bit more of a nice, more casual side to stuff. And I feel like everywhere I looked, Queens was kind of that place because everybody here cares about their academics and really wants to do well, but also wants that kind of other side, the more social side, the more community based. Because whenever people like talk about Queens, they always talk about the community and just the lifestyle here. And I really like Kingston as a city too. It's very nice. So I definitely like I was always flipping between do I go to Queens or Laurier or Guelph, all these places. Oh well, Guelph is close to where I live, so that would be nice. But Queens just seems like wherever you go, people are saying they enjoyed it. So that was a big aspect to it as well. Although I'm not in that program at the moment, Queens does offer a computing and the creative arts program,
Wow.
which is super cool. So it's a Bachelor of Arts degree rather than a Bachelor of Science. And it's basically just you pick, you're doing computer science, but then you pick, do you want to do that with film or music or drama? And then you kind of like combine the two, and it's super cool. Or like visual art, because computing and the arts are more connected than a lot of people really think. And it's super useful to have people who are more artistically inclined to be in computer science, like scenarios. So that was something that really drew me to it. I ended up going with just the computing degree, but that was a super cool thing that they had. So yeah, a lot of talking with different people, talking with my teachers who had gone to different schools, and a lot of looking up YouTube videos of people who go to different schools and what life is like there.
Mm-hmm. I love that, honestly, Louise. When you mentioned the program, I think it's a question we get a lot. We have students who, you know, because of maybe a hobby or because of something they've seen someone else do, they're really interested in the IT computer side of things, but then they say, well, you know, I want to go study computer sciences or I want to study IT, but I don't want to completely remove the creativity. You know, like I want to be able to paint or you know, create video games or something like that. And they're like, well, if I focus on IT, I don't get to do that. So I think it's really cool you mentioned that program because like that's something as someone who enjoys IT but is very creative. I worry that IT would be like a super, you know, isolating. I'd be put into a small box. So it's really cool that there are programs like that because that's not something we have here in Newfoundland yet. That would be amazing to have, but wow, that's so cool. And Razz, how about you? Like, how did you decide what university to attend?
Yeah, so unlike Louise, I did like apply to like Waterloo and like some of like the big schools or whatever, and then I toured some of them, which is more of an option since I'm from Ontario. It's a little bit harder if you're from Newfoundland to like get out to these schools, but you can also like sometimes they have like virtual open houses and stuff. And the main thing that made me decide on Carleton was I was like talking to students, and I'm physically disabled and I'm autistic, and so I need accommodations for classes. And so at a lot of the bigger schools, I had heard from other students that like there wasn't as much support for disabled students and that it was a lot harder to get accommodations that you need and get established and like do well in your program versus Carleton has the Paul Menton Center, which is a pretty good disability resource, as well as like a disability studies program. So it's a little bit more ingrained into the school. And so that was why I kind of decided to go with Carleton. And I was originally in the Bachelor of Computer Science at Carleton. Um, but then in my first year, I took a geomatics class and a geography class. And I know a lot of high school students are probably like, oh, geography, like we hate that. That's the bad word because geography in high school is like not taught well. But geography is like really at most schools is like really ingrained with like climate change studies, which is something that I've been really passionate about. And so taking that geomatics class, which I knew nothing about before I took it, it was just a recommendation from a friend. And I took it, and it was a really cool way to kind of integrate my interest in computer science and like the problem solving aspects of computer science that I like with the kind of more applied aspect of geomatics and like climate change research. And so through that, I've been able to work on different projects. Like a couple of years ago, I was working on a project with a professor that was looking at wildfire mapping in northern Alberta. And so using like computer science techniques and statistical techniques to map out where the most likely areas for wildfires are. So definitely my brain kind of keys in better to more of that like practical aspect, which is something that like I think Cyber Titan does really well. Is it's not the kind of more abstract aspects of computer science that is focused on. It's like concretely like this is what you need to do. And so yeah, that's kind of why I end up in where I am.
You two are just constantly hitting on like I look at my list of questions. You're hitting on all the like questions I have further down, which is amazing. But you
Oh,
touched on.
and the other thing I wanted to add is similar to Queens's uh, computing in the arts program. My sibling, Taro, who also did Cyber Titan in their first couple of years at Center Wellington, is currently in the interactive multimedia design program at Carleton, which is under the Bachelor of Information Technology and is basically a combined program at Algonquin and Carleton. So you get both a college diploma and a university degree. And it combines like computer science with like game design and animation and stuff like that. So there's definitely those programs, like they're much smaller programs, but they are out there. And so if like you don't have to feel pegged into being like, oh, I should just get a computer science degree, like you can really find the kind of more specific niches if that's what you're interested in. I think that makes you more likely to do well in a program if it's like really tuned into what you're interested in.
No, absolutely. And I think like I love that you mentioned the idea of like the wildfire mapping, because I think a lot of the feedback we get, we hear when we're out at, schools or conferences, a lot of women or a lot of gender diverse individuals that come up to us, they say, hey, I love computers, I love tech, but if I get into tech, I feel like, or if I get into STEM, a lot of people think this is an overarching STEM thing. If I get into science, tech, engineering, math, I won't be dealing with real world issues. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to be out there, I want to change the world, I want to create good, I want to be the change. And it's so amazing because I think as we go on, especially through the pandemic, we're realizing like tech is integral to that, right? Like I love the wildfire mapping. I think that that's something that tech, and I was going to hand it over to Tim. Tim, that kind of question, I guess, would be, what would be your response to somebody who says, hey, if you get into STEM, you're not really creating change. You're just kind of putting in ones and zeros, right?
Well, I'll give you somebody's suggestion who's a lot smarter than I am. A few years ago, actually, I think Louise was there, and I think Razz was my co-op student that semester, where they went after artificial intelligence for the first time, by the way. So whatever Razz goes after, they're going to land it. But we had one of the team that worked on the Watson AI for Jeopardy. So just by luck, his son happened to be coming to our school. So he offered to come in and actually teach us how to get into AI and chatbots and coding them and everything. But he had a really good conversation. I think it was with Louise and Emily at the end of the class in grade 10. And he said it's all about intersectionality. He said you don't just take comp sci for comp sci. You go, and what I love is both of these rock stars here have gone after intersectional things. Cybersecurity is multidisciplinary. Really, you've got to draw from a lot of different contexts to make it work. And geomatics is right up Razz's alley. Like that is exactly what they should be doing. So it's powerful, and when you're able to apply the tech like that, it's thrilling. My son's at Algonquin right now, by the way, going the other way. He's doing 3D animation, maybe aiming to Carleton eventually for his degree. So like applying the technology to whatever you're into, whether it's arts or climate change, anything that really you're passionate about, that's where the power is.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. Like we hear a lot of, like, we work with a lot of youth who, who identifies two-spirit LGBTQIA plus, and as a queer person, when I first started getting into tech, and my background is as a tech educator, like I worked in high school doing tech education. I would get the question a lot of times, which was like, hey, if I'm queer and I'm really interested in social justice issues, if I want to get out and I want to create change, how can I do that? If I'm in the world of tech, or if I'm in the world of science. And I think that it comes down to that intersectionality, right? Like for example, you're not going into math. Sure, you can focus on pure mathematics, but if you're going into math and you want it to be, intersectional with gender studies or what have you, right? I think there's always that opportunity. So, yeah, no, I love that. That's the thing. The next question.
Sorry,
ahead,
just to add on to that, the project that I'm currently working on, so that wildfire piece was like 2 years ago, and currently I'm working with another professor, and I'm really passionate about like policing and prison abolition, and stuff along that route. And so I found a professor at Carleton who's like totally in the like human geography urban studies piece. But since I since I'm more steeped in the computer science and statistics realm, she ended up hiring me as an undergraduate research assistant to work on this project that she's working on, looking at the social spatial networking of where the ideas are coming about policing and prison abolition related to podcasts. So we have like 1,500 podcasts as part of podcast episodes as part of our study. And we're like mapping that and using statistical analysis and stuff to look at like where those ideas are generating from. And so I think that's like a really key piece, that like if you are really interested in like gender studies or queer studies or disability studies, even if that's not your major, if that's your minor or something, a lot of the time you can like connect with professors and offer like, hey, I'm interested in this, but I also have this computer science piece. And a lot of time that's something that they're really looking for, which can be a cool way. And especially when you're at a smaller school, like Carleton isn't like tiny, but it's like definitely not as big as like something like Waterloo. You have more of that chance to like connect with professors, and there's oftentimes a lot of like undergraduate research, like bursaries and awards and stuff that you can apply for to kind of get that experience if that's something that you're interested in.
And that kind of study, like I'm so interested when you're talking about the podcast and that whole idea, like that whole realm of study is the definition of when we talk about creating change and meaningful work, right? Like that is the perfect idea of intersectionality at its finest, right? So I love that. Louise, I wanted to ask you the next question, and it's a bigger question, so feel free if you need to think about it. I can, we can shift around or go to another question. But would you say you faced any challenges as a female or gender diverse individual when it comes to wanting to be in like a STEM field?
Yeah, for sure. So thankfully in university I haven't experienced much firsthand yet, other than mostly just like residual stuff, like how you go into a lecture hall and you're one of like 10 girls there, and that's it. And like we all usually sit together still. And that was the thing when I was in high school, the girls would always sit together in the STEM classrooms, and we still do that in university for the most part. You go into lecture halls and exam halls, and it's just overwhelmingly male still. even though more and more girls are getting into the field, it's still so incredibly overwhelmingly male. And then you go into like an arts lecture, and it's actually like I have one lecture, one class I'm doing right now, which is about witchcraft and the supernatural, which is actually really cool. And the classroom is almost entirely non-male, and that's insane. I've like never seen that. It's like 250 students in one room, and it's so cool. I definitely experienced a bit more adversity more in high school. I think especially because Fergus, like where Central Wellington District High School is located, is such like a small conservative town that it was hard sometimes. Like I there was one moment I distinctly remember, very distinctly remember in high school. I can't remember which grade it was, like grade 11 or something, when we were like did like physical IT there sometimes. So we fixed all the school's Chromebooks because all the students at school just decided to like smash them and stuff. So we would be fixing the Chromebooks in the computer science class all the time. And I had this little scalpel that I was using to get some of the keys on the keyboard off to repair it. And this guy comes up to me, he takes it from my hand and goes, "Do you know how to use that? Do you know what you're doing? Like, I don't trust you with this." Like, and I was IT certified at that point, like Cisco IT certified, and I was just like, dude, come on. And I think that defining moment, although that was a very like physical, like taking something out of your hands moment, there's so many times like that where it was really, really subtle stuff. It's always the subtleties, the subtle doubts. I remember one time when I was Tim's co-op student, and I told one of the younger like grade 9 students that I like our Cyber Titan team did a CBC interview, which we did, and Razz was in that as well. And he didn't believe me. He was like, "Who is your interviewer? I don't know that person. Like I've never heard of this interview before." And I'm like, "Hello, why would I lie about this?" It's the things that don't seem to matter, but they build up a lot over time. And thankfully coming to Kingston and just coming to a university, although Queen's is definitely not the most diverse university, it's a very like predominantly white university, which kind of sucks. It is still so much more diverse than what I experienced back in Fergus, and people don't care as much.
Right.
So it's been a very nice change actually seeing that people don't really care. Or the nice people, the people that I try to surround myself with don't care. But yeah, definitely being from a small conservative town, it's a big change, and there was a lot of things that I think everybody faced, which was kind of crazy.
And yeah, no, and thanks for that. Like, and I love when, when we have guests that are willing to share those personal pieces, right? Because I think it's tricky when you talk about the subtle things, regardless of how small, it's kind of like when you think of like a small pinprick, eventually 1,000 pinpricks, they're, it's eventually going to hurt, right? And I think it's one of those things that we hear a lot here in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's when I talk specifically about the island of Newfoundland, it's, a lot of really small, smaller conservative communities, right? So a lot of people face the same issues where, it is very Caucasian, very straight, heteronormative beliefs, a lot of Catholicism, things like that. So we do kind of run the risk sometimes of when students come to us, they're not even, just the idea of discussing gender is like such a shocker, right? So like, what do you mean there's more than 2 genders? Like that doesn't make sense, so it's the idea of, people coming to us. And I was at a school last spring actually, and I had a student who was in grade 10 who we were doing a STEM activity, and there was probably 25 students in the class, and I was walking around, and I had the student turn around as they were, hands on the activity, and they turned around and they were like, "So like as a girl, like I can actually like do like STEM, like I can study STEM as like when I go to university." And I was like, "Yeah." And she was just like absolutely gobsmacked. She was like, "But I thought that was like specifically for men. Like that's a man thing, right?" And it was so interesting to see, like, if you do grow up in a smaller area that is more conservative, oftentimes those beliefs kind of carry with you, right, into high school, into university and beyond. Raz, same question to you actually. So with regards to like the challenges and stuff that you face, high school, university, whenever really.
Yeah, so definitely like echoing what Luis was saying about like growing up in kind of the small like conservative town. I didn't come out as non-binary until my first year of university, so I definitely had that experience of people being like, I think Luis's year is a year younger than me and had like two or three of you in most of the classes versus I was the only like girl in my upper year computer science and computer engineering classes. Um, and then echoing, yeah, like once I got to university and my first year I was in computer science, it's definitely like there is still people who kind of suck. And you'll find those people anywhere. But I would say like in university, there's so many more people that like it's a lot easier to just find the people you like and like kind of tune out other people. So like yeah, there was like some guys who were sort of like shitty and like I don't know if I can say that. You can cut that out if you need to. But they yeah, but like you can surround yourself with like other girls or other queer people who are in tech to kind of help combat that. And then also like for me, most of my like negative experiences in my first year were associated with like the huge like Carleton Computer Science Association, like student society, where there was like huge big events, but there's a lot of the time there'll be like smaller events that are generally a little bit better and there's more moderation and stuff that you can have in those spaces. So I would say like if you're having trouble as like a queer person or as a woman in STEM or in computer science, like finding those like sort of smaller niches and smaller communities can be a good way to like still be involved in the community, but without having to like open yourself up to a lot more of that stuff that's hard to deal with.
Yeah, and that's an amazing point. Like you mentioned, the idea that when you find for people when they pursue college and university, it's so much easier to find people that you connect with, especially if you're in a specific program, like if you go in to study archaeology or mathematics or engineering, I feel like oftentimes you start to find like-minded people in those areas. But I definitely sympathize. I think it's very challenging when you come from a really small rural area to be able to kind of like sometimes find your people, right? Especially if you are non-binary, if you're queer, if you're part of a minority, I feel like you're kind of oftentimes seen as like, the odd one out. So, and that's yeah, really challenging.
And I would say also like don't be afraid to make friends outside of your program. Like queer student centers or women's centers and stuff can be a really great place to like meet friends. That's where most of my friends I met at the GSRC, which is the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center at Carleton. And sometimes you can like go into those spaces and not necessarily be planning on meeting someone in computer science or wherever, but then you can find someone there who's like, oh, I'm also in computer science. And then that's like a way that you can connect without having to like be kind of more vulnerable in like bigger classes and less like safer spaces and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This next question is for all three of you. So I don't know who would like to go first. You can make a run at it. This one I have mulled over myself a lot, and I still really try to think about it on a daily basis and try to think about how we tackle it. But I guess before we jump to the how we tackle it and come up with solutions, it would be, why do you think women and gender diverse individuals are less likely to pursue STEM? Like, why is it that, we walk into a classroom still in 2023, and we see one person who doesn't identify as male there?
Yeah, I think I mean one interesting history piece, this might be a bit of a tangent, but if people didn't know this, the first kind of computer scientists were women doing like working with NASA and stuff. The people who were doing that math were basically, it was seen as like women and largely like Black women and like minority women were the people who were doing that. Because it wasn't seen as like real science essentially, but then as kind of computer science and tech like gained more like prestige, it did kind of switch to being a more male dominated field. And so I think one thing that's like always helped me out is like it's so cool that like the like first computer scientist was like Ada Lovelace, who was a woman. And like kind of keeping in mind that like lineage and like genealogy there is like a really kind of interesting piece for me. And then like in terms of why like women and queer people tend to get pushed out of computer science and STEM and tech. I think a lot of it is just due to like, especially when you're in like a rural area, the kind of expectations, like I know I faced issues with our like guidance counselors and stuff in high school, kind of pushing me to take like the hospitality and the cooking classes. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but that wasn't what I was interested in. And it also can go the other way. Like I have like male friends from high school who were told like, oh, you shouldn't take the cooking classes, like that you should go and take the car repair classes and stuff like that. So I think a lot of it can kind of be like older generations perceptions of how things should be kind of just getting sort of saturated into people's minds. And a lot of people don't want to make waves. So if someone's like really insinuating you should go into this pathway, it's like it might be easier for some people, especially if you're new to high school and you're kind of scared or you're nervous, to just go along with that instead of maybe doing what you really wanted to do. So I think that's kind of one of the main reasons that I know of that people kind of get pushed out of STEM fields.
I could speak to maybe the things that changed my mind about it. And Razz brought me to one of the first ones when she won was it Women in Technology Award? What was that?
Yeah.
But,
The
yeah.
the queer people in technology, the queer student in technology award, the one I won in grade 12.
No, I'm thinking the one you took me to that conference where you won the provincial award.
Oh yes, that one.
Uh,
Yeah, that was Women in Science and Technology, I think.
Yeah, and to go there, and that was basically a conference with over 1,000 young women in STEM in it, and to see that after, seeing them systemically knocked out of my program for years was really like, it was like seeing the future, and it gave me hope. And I think you've really got to hang on to that hope. So that opportunity, and it only came through the award Razz won. I wouldn't have seen it otherwise. So just seeing the sheer volume of people actually moving things in that direction, it's thrilling. The only other thing I would add was making a team for the girls and making space for girls and non-binary students in the classroom was really important. You've got some boys who are kind and very conscious of that, but the number of times you would get those like million little needles things that Louise was talking about, where they wouldn't even realize they were saying something that just knocked them down. So making space is really important. And Razz eventually went to the senior team, and ever since then, our senior team has been co-op. So, or co-ed, like we've never had a monogender team since then. So like it really changed our program. And by the time these two had graduated, we were regularly getting more than one girl in my senior classes. So it really, like, it changed over the time we were all in the high school together. It can change. But boy, it's not easy.
No. Louise, is there anything that comes to mind that you wanted to share? Are you okay?
In terms of why, I think that's a question that goes so deep that you could like talk about for hours and hours and hours. So I'm not entirely sure why, because you can really study that for ages. I mean, I know for sure if it's like why for someone like me personally, again, growing up in a conservative town, with just so many people who don't realize that things change way faster than they think. And then like some advice for girls who maybe want to get into it but are scared about being perceived differently or not as equal. Just do it out of spite. Like, just be like, yeah, you don't want me to do it, I'm gonna do it because I can. That's what so many people do. And it's those people who kind of do it anyway that help pave the way for other people, is that confidence of just going for it no matter what people think of you. And then hopefully you can gain their respect, because if you don't, like if they don't respect you, then that's kind of not great. But all you can do is try.
Yeah, no, I like it's funny, but like I love the out of spite thing, right? Because I think regardless of who you are, if you're interested in something, and it's a big thing here. Like I think back to when I was in high school, I was the only female identifying student who was in our grade 11 earth sciences class. And I remember walking in there, and I come from, not a small community, but a relatively smaller community, not far from St. John's, the capital here. And I remember walking in, and it was just like, people were chatting, and then it was just dead silence. I walk in through the door, and everyone's just immediately like, what, and I was also a grade younger, and I had applied. I had to go to the office and apply, I want to take this course. And the guidance counselor kind of didn't argue with me, but was like, are you sure? It doesn't really, why not, you could take cooking, or you can take home ec, or you can take, all these other courses that, can give you the life skills, a woman needs. And it was a very strange conversation, because I think, I really wanted to take the trades courses. I wanted to take, the geography and the courses that could get me out and get my hands dirty. And I think it's hard that idea of subjects being gendered is still so intense in a lot of schools, right? Because when you go there, a lot of mechanics classes, you're not going to see a lot of women or queer people in mechanics classes, because at the end of the day, they don't feel safe. That's oftentimes the feedback we get is, a lot of times people are like, if I have a disability, or if I'm part of a minority, I don't want to be in a class where, I'm completely singled out every single day. So that's a really hard part.
Yeah, and I'll add to that like having a teacher who kind of has your back can be really useful for that. Like Mr. King was like a super essential in like high school for me, for like actually knowing that like if stuff got really bad, he would like talk to the boys, or just like let me kind of do my own thing kind of separately. And yeah, so just like it's super important for like teachers to like actively kind of foster that, and actively like be in tune to what's like happening in the classroom, and like making sure that they're supporting their students.
Mm-hmm. And that honestly, like, that's such a major part of it too, because I know the other part of this question is, when we look at why women and gender diverse people aren't in STEM, we look at, how do we fix that? What do we do? What can we change? And at the end of the day, I think it's exactly like you said, Razz. It's the idea that, we have people who are in positions, I don't love the term, but positions of power, guidance counselors, principals, teachers, parents, aunts, uncles, who are those safe people. Because I feel like a lot of times, if you are, a female identifying, or if you're non-binary or trans, oftentimes you don't go into a lot of spaces feeling safe. And that's a lot of like, when we talk to a lot of our youth, they'll say, hey, I'm really interested in IT, but when I go in there, I know that it's not going to be a welcoming space. And oftentimes it comes down to, you can want something, but you need to know you're also going to be safe when you do it. So I think that's a big thing, is for educators to try and to advocate, right? So I think it's amazing, like when you talk about like Mr. King being that person for you, right? Because I think you need that person at school, whoever it is, if it's a guidance counselor, a teacher, a principal, which is amazing. And then my last, like, I guess, bigger question, which Louise kind of touched on, was if, for any students that are watching this, and most of our students are junior high school, what advice would you give to students who are currently in high school, who are, making their way through, they are female, they're queer, they're gender diverse, and they're in the situation where they're really debating on pursuing STEM, with all the barriers, all the challenges, all the amazing things we've talked about. Do you have any like pieces of advice? And it can be as random as anything. I love to do it out of spite. I think that's an amazing, it's got to be like a tattoo someone gets. None of you, please. I'm not encouraging tattoos as a tattooer. Tattoo. I'm totally blanking on the word of when you really, really love something. A tattoo. Come on, Razz.
Enthusiast?
Enthusiast. I knew you would know. The moment I looked, I was like, I feel like Razz knows exactly. As a tattoo enthusiast. But yeah, what pieces of advice would you have? You can take a second to think about it. Tim, what advice would you have as a teacher, as someone who, who's been in front of the class, standing there day after day? What advice would you give to any students who are like, maybe STEM, do I want to do it?
For me, it was always put the technology in their hands and let them figure out how it works, and then they'll realize there's nothing magical about it. Coming as cybersecurity, like I said, I had no background in it, but I've done some IT. So, but we got a handle on it pretty quickly. Like it's none of it's magical. You can just sit down, work it out what it is. In a lot of cases, the people who try and make it look magical are these really insecure men who have a lock on the whole industry. If you can get away from the Elons and all the rest of them who are running around waving that flag, you can just look right into it and see it for what it is. Louise and I had a chat last year about this, and she said something that really stuck with me, and it's just give it a whirl and see how it works. But you'll find a place in it for you. And there are some really unique things that if we had more diverse people doing it, we wouldn't run into problems. I'm thinking AI training sets off the top of my head right now because I'm studying it for ICTC. And the idea that we keep running into all of these really racist and sexist bots because they've been trained that way is a real issue. If we had more diversity in the people creating these things, we wouldn't have these problems. So it actually makes things better. So that's why you should stick with it, because we need you.
Love that.
Yeah, one thing that really got me through like the entirety of high school, which Mr. King just kind of touched on there, was just try it. The worst that can happen if you try something is that it doesn't work out, and then you just try again. If it's a subject that scares you, you might be a lot better at it than you think you are, and a lot of people usually are. They usually think, oh, this is terrifying, because so much of computer science is abstraction, is making the nitty-gritty details of it into like big ideas, so then just average users have no idea what's going on in the computer. But what's really going on in the computer is like, it's really complex, but it's also shockingly simple. It's just like simple on a very large scale, and anyone can understand that. Like, yeah, it's just try things out. It's it does not matter if you're a girl or gender nonconforming or anything like that. You're a person who has ideas and who has thoughts and who has skills, and that's all that really matters. Like, we shouldn't be seeing things like gender when it comes to occupations, because yeah, like you guys are saying, why are occupations gendered? Why is anything gendered? It doesn't matter. So yeah, just try things that you like and you think could be interesting, because you could be really good at it.
Love it.
Yeah, and then I would say my piece of advice is like kill that little guy in your head that's telling you you're not good enough for it, like the imposter syndrome. Like I'm still dealing with imposter syndrome in terms of like, oh, like I'm not good enough to do this, I'm not good enough to try this, I can't take this class, I can't try out for this opportunity. And what I've learned from like talking to some like cis guys is that a lot of them just don't have that voice in their head as much. And so even if you're thinking like, oh, there's like no way I'll succeed at this, you'd be surprised at how well you can do, and like just trying it out. And even if you don't have that innate confidence in yourself, like faking it until you make it can be really useful. Like just project the confidence that you wish you had, and that's what a lot of other people are doing. And sometimes you'll find the confidence along the way.
Like, listen, the fake it till you make it, I have held near and dear to my heart for very, very many years. And people are always like, actually, you're so confident. And I'm like, that's the anxiety. It just makes you feel real confident. And then, absolutely. Thank you both so much. I think, oh, that's fantastic. I love the advice. Before we clue up, I wanted to give Tim a chance actually to jump into a little intro for Cyber Titan, because we've all kind of, well, the three of you, not me really, has touched on Cyber Titan. But I wanted to give any teachers, principals, students that are watching kind of an intro into what it is and what it entails, because I think it does a lot more than what I even realized, to be honest. So Tim, if I can hand it over to you.
Just to add on to the fake it till you make it thing, I'm doing it right now. I've gotten wrapped up in this quantum computing initiative. I've been trying to learn quantum mechanics over the summer because I dropped out of grade 11 science, and that's complicated. And now I'm in a position where evidently I'm going to go present at the UN at the end of November in Africa on quantum readiness for cybersecurity. I'm a high school teacher. I don't know how I got into it. I'm channeling Razz and Louise, and I'm just like, you can figure this out. So it all comes around anyway. Um, as far as Cyber Titan goes, basically what I liked about the competition when we first got into it is still maybe its strongest thing, but it's really like a real world situation they put you in. They give you a virtual machine, which means it's just a computer that's fabricated. It's all existing in software. You can't break anything on it. One of the things we did with our Cyber Titan teams is we got used to breaking the virtual machine so we could restart it and keep going. And everyone, I wanted to make sure they had that skill set because sometimes you have to. There's a lot of iteration in it. You get to just try stuff and see if it works. If you like that detective work and puzzle solving, this is right up your alley. And when you're doing it, you can think, well, maybe this will work. I'll try it. Oh, that broke it. Like it's completely destroyed. So you just restart it and go back to where you were before, get your points back, and then figure out what's next. But there's no, it's not like the math question they give you where, and Raz especially will love this, but when they give you the question and you have to figure out the answer the way they want you to figure out the answer, because I know math teachers didn't always like the way Raz did that, because they would often find a shortcut or a better way to do it. And then the math teacher got angry about that. And we talked about that a few times in class. But in Cyber Titan, that's not the case. The case is find a solution. And really, it's up to you. I've had students come back through the competition and say, I don't know if I'm really good at this now, or I'm just really good at researching things. It's the same thing. Am I good at this, or am I just good at looking stuff up in Google? Like, it doesn't matter. It is the same thing. Cybersecurity experts do that. They don't sit there and have this encyclopedic knowledge of everything that can go wrong. Let me give you an example from cybersecurity. They have a thing called a 0-day exploit. And what that means is no one's seen it before. So the first time you see a 0-day exploit, there's no defense for it. No one ever expected it to happen, and it hits you out of nowhere. And a lot of the cyber attacks you see are like that. How do you prepare for that? You can't memorize an answer to that situation. What you need to do is be light on your feet and look at what's in front of you and think, okay, I can work my way out of this. And Cyber Patriot and Cyber Titan are a lot like that. They give you a broken virtual machine and say, fix it. The early ones are nice and gentle. Then they get harder.
So when it comes to Cyber Titan, Tim, is that something like when should teachers / students start to plan, prepare? Like what are we looking at dates wise for this year?
So we've still got about 15 days left before sign up closes. So we've got maybe 2 weeks. It's October 3rd. It closes this year. And then what happens is mid-October, you'll have a 4-day window where you can apply 6 hours of time. When you open your first image, the clock starts. You got 6 hours to get as many points as you can, and then you're done. What we always did was we picked a Friday of school. We did an in-school field trip. It would just be like the soccer team going out to a tournament or something. But for us, we were in our lab doing Cyber Titan as our tournament. And then would get pizza in, and everybody would bring snacks because you cannot do cybersecurity without snacks. And then everybody would just sit there and work their way through it.
And so everyone is working on the same problem?
Well, there are multiple images. There are 3 images. There's Windows, Windows Server, and a Linux, some form of Linux. So you've got 3 things open, but the teams we found work best if we kind of rotated the seats. So if we had people sit through each one, and because sometimes you get kind of blind to the problem, right? If you're staring at it too.
As well as the Cisco networking.
And that's what I was going to get to. And then you've got your specialists. If you've got a student who likes working alone or who just wants to really go deep on one thing, you can get a Cisco specialist, and what they're doing is building a secure network using a simulation software called Packet Tracer. So for the Cisco student, the sports analogy, there'd be like they're a place kicker in a football team, but they're a specialist who just does something quite distinct from the rest of the competition. And that was always our secret power, to be honest with you. Like our Cisco scores were exceptionally good because we always had students who we could put into that who really loved doing it and were really good at it.
Love it. And number of students, what are we looking at?
4 to 6 on a team is good.
6. Okay.
I've often found, I think 6 is a good number because you can rotate people through. People can walk away and go for a walk and come back, get some fresh. Yeah. And there are 3 rounds that you've got to compete in if you're going for maximum points, and those are October, November, and December, one in each.
Right.
And then if you do well, you'll get invited back to the semifinals in January. But that's only the top 25%.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. And that's international.
It's international. There were 7
Wow.
countries, over 30,000 students last year.
Wow.
During COVID, it kind of petered a bit, but it's come back strong now. So we're on the.
Amazing. And then, so I will make sure for anyone tuning into this, if you're interested in Cyber Titan, we'll have a link down below. But is there anywhere, any videos or resources or anything like that, Tim, you would recommend people checking out to kind of learn more about it and get like an overview of what they think it's going to feel like?
ICTC has a few extra. We've kind of built some cybersecurity resources around the competition. So Field Effect does Cyber Range. Both Louise and Razz have been on it because that's where the national finals are. And what we've done is built out from that. But what I found was the lessons they had, it was on some pretty complex encryption and things like that.
Okay.
So we've recently built new interactive courses where you can go into a virtual machine and try things out. But it's things like introduction to command line in Windows. So if you've never done command line in Windows, this will teach you how that works and what it works.
Amazing.
Or Linux, if you've never touched Linux before, here's what Linux looks like. This is how you navigate through it.
Which is great. And I mean, that plays into like how we'll have ICTC courses up for students and members to be able to pop on and learn all those things. And I'm correct in saying that they can kind of pick and choose what they're interested in, right? Like they don't need to go through and do all of them. There's no prereqs. It's just kind of hopping in. Amazing.
You've got a full menu of options, and you can pick and choose what you want. And if you want all of them and you want to just work through them, you can do that too. If you're also in Cyber Patriot, though, they give you practice images. You can see how the scoring machine works and get used to. I always said VM wrangling, like learning how to manage the virtual machine is a big part of this. And once you're comfortable with how the software works, it's pretty straightforward.
Perfect. And then with regards to my last question would be with regards to skill level, like if we have teachers, guidance counselors, principals, students who are coming at this saying, my knowledge is base, non-existent, or my knowledge is super, super amazing, blow it out the park. Any's okay, any in between.
Actually, I think it would help if you had less, because you are not allowed to help during the competition round. The coaches become sort of judges of the competition during competition rounds. You have to make sure your teams aren't talking to each other. You have to sort of play the role of referee during the competition. You're not allowed to help. So you may be a genius at it, but I think you'd find yourself really frustrated if that were the case. So,
but knowledge level for students, like base level for students,
is take control of it. We always pick a captain, and these two have both been captains, and let them lead the team and let the team decide who's going to specialize in what, and so everybody feels like they've got a place in it. But the collaboration and communication is a big part of it, which is where our girls teams always came on really strong.
Yeah, makes sense. I love it. Awesome. Okay.
Also,
so
letting your students pick their own team names can be a good way to get them to enjoy the competition. So me and Louise were the inaugural Terra bitches.
I love it.
As in terabyte, and then also, which we did face some backlash from the school for that name, but it was definitely like a rallying point. Like we really enjoyed the name and we made like branding and stuff. And I know like other teams since then, like my siblings team has been called like Morpheus, and they made like a whole logo.
Love it.
So yeah, definitely, like, because some schools will just name it like CWDHS 1, 2, 3, but if you like let the students like pick the name and like craft their identity there, it can be
Love it. Oh my goodness. Okay, so they get to pick their name. No, I love that idea of being able to make it theirs, right? I love the name also. Fantastic. I won't keep you too much longer because I know you may have classes to run to or something of the sort. I know we're at a bit of a time difference wise. Time zones are the worst. I get so confused sometimes. We're on a half an hour here also, so we're like it's 1:30 here, which confuses everybody, including myself sometimes. So thank 3 of you so much for coming in and letting us hear about your stories and how you got to where you are now. From the sense of it, you're absolutely killing it, which I love. And I would love to like just sit and have like hour-long conversations with both of you because and please stay in touch because your whole journey sounds absolutely riveting. I want to know want to know what this year looks like. That's honestly what I'm so interested in. So thank you for everything. And Tim, I will be in touch with regards to next steps, next sessions. And for anyone tuning in, I will make sure that there are lots of links below for you to look at for ICTC and Cyber Titan. Any last thoughts before we clue off everyone, or is everyone good?
Anything I can do to help, just whatever you need.
Amazing.
Yeah, no last thoughts, but thank you for facilitating this, Ashley.
Awesome. Thanks, Razz. Thanks, Louise. Okay, see y'all later.
Hi, it's great
Bye.
seeing you both.